In controlled personality assessments, individuals scoring higher on Machiavellianism consistently showed a pattern of reduced self-disclosure paired with increased elicitation of personal information from others. The imbalance was not subtle, it was measurable across repeated conversational trials. What does it mean when one person leaves every interaction knowing more than they revealed? In personality research across occupational and social settings, psychologists have repeatedly documented a recurring behavioral cluster associated with high Dark Triad traits, particularly narcissistic and subclinical psychopathic tendencies. In structured interviews, certain individuals display unusually smooth verbal confidence, minimal hesitation, and high emotional control. Yet what stands out is not what they say, but how systematically they draw information from others while revealing very little in return. The pattern is stable enough that researchers studying interpersonal exploitation describe it as asymmetrical self-disclosure dynamics. These individuals appear socially effortless, even charismatic. But their interactions consistently produce one-sided emotional exposure from others. At what point does confidence stop being expression and start functioning as extraction? This video operates through the lens of interpersonal asymmetry in emotional exchange, a concept linked to research on Dark Triad personality structures and social influence mechanisms. The focus is not extreme pathology. It is subclinical variation, traits distributed across normal populations, as described in personality research by Paulhus and colleagues on narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. The mechanism is subtle. Some individuals unconsciously or strategically regulate self-disclosure while maximizing information intake from others. Robert Cialdini's principle of reciprocity becomes distorted here. Instead of balanced exchange, one side triggers openness while remaining selectively opaque. By the end, you will recognize a specific pattern: interactions that feel engaging in the moment but consistently leave one person more exposed than the other. In recorded conversational studies, individuals with high self-monitoring traits tend to reveal fewer personal details while maintaining high engagement with others. They ask questions. They sustain eye contact. They mirror emotional tone. But their own internal state remains carefully protected. Confidence, in its functional form, often begins with controlled opacity, not expression. Neurologically, this reduces vulnerability signaling while preserving perceived social accessibility. Detection tool: if someone consistently redirects conversations back to you without equivalent self-disclosure, observe the asymmetry rather than the friendliness. This is the first structural layer: engagement without exposure. A key mechanism in this trait cluster is not dominance through speech, but precision in feedback suppression. Instead of reacting strongly, the individual offers minimal validation signals, brief acknowledgement, neutral facial responses, delayed emotional alignment. This creates a vacuum. Humans naturally attempt to resolve this by increasing emotional output. Absence of reaction is not neutral, it is an active pressure system that increases self-disclosure in others. In behavioral terms, this aligns with uncertainty reduction theory: people speak more when feedback is insufficient. Detection tool: if you find yourself explaining more than intended in someone's presence, their non-reactivity may be shaping your output. This is where extraction begins, not through force, but through induced expansion of self-revelation. High-functioning Dark Triad traits often include controlled mirroring. The individual reflects emotional tone, vocabulary style, and conversational pacing. This creates perceived similarity, which increases trust via social proof mechanisms. But the mirroring is selective. Only emotionally useful elements are reflected back. Mirroring does not always indicate empathy. In some cases, it is a calibration tool for accelerating information access. This produces a subtle illusion: they understand me deeply, when in reality, they are mapping behavioral patterns. Detection tool: if someone mirrors your emotional expressions but rarely introduces original emotional vulnerability, the exchange may be asymmetrical. Each layer builds a profile of the other person without equivalent exposure. The most advanced layer is not what is said, but what is systematically extracted. These individuals often guide conversation through open-ended prompts that require personal disclosure, experiences, emotional reactions, insecurities, relational history, yet they contribute selectively minimal equivalent data. Information asymmetry is not accidental in these interactions, it is structurally maintained. Over time, the other participant develops a detailed self-narrative exposure profile while the initiating individual remains comparatively undefined. Detection tool. After interaction, ask a simple question: what do I actually know about them that is specific and personal? If the answer is limited, asymmetry is present. But here is where it becomes more complex. Not all asymmetric disclosure is manipulation. In secure relational contexts, therapy, mentorship, deep trust relationships, one-sided disclosure is temporarily functional and even necessary. The difference lies in direction and outcome. Healthy asymmetry leads to integration and clarity. Exploitative asymmetry leads to extraction without mutual grounding. So the same behavior can produce opposite outcomes depending on intent, structure, and reciprocity over time. This is where surface-level psychological labeling fails. Because the trait itself is not the issue, it is the system it operates within. As disclosure increases, cognitive load shifts. The more a person reveals, the more they begin organizing their own narrative in real time. This creates vulnerability. Emotional consistency becomes harder to maintain under continuous self-reporting. The other party, remaining less exposed, retains cognitive stability. Control is often not imposed externally, it emerges from uneven distribution of psychological load. Detection tool. If one person becomes progressively more emotionally detailed while the other remains stable and structured, the imbalance is operational. This is where confidence begins to resemble control, not because of dominance, but because of informational advantage. If certain personality configurations naturally produce asymmetrical emotional exchange, then social interaction is not evenly distributed by default. It is structured by variation in disclosure control, feedback regulation, and emotional visibility. This means that in everyday life, people are not equally known. Some are readable. Others are constructed. And some are systematically constructing others while remaining minimally constructed themselves. Which raises an unavoidable question: when you feel understood by someone quickly and effortlessly, what exactly are they understanding first? And what are you revealing before you realize it is being collected rather than reciprocated? Now that the mechanism is visible, detection becomes structural rather than intuitive. First tool: track disclosure balance. In any interaction, notice whether personal information flows symmetrically over time. Asymmetry sustained beyond initial rapport is significant. Second tool: monitor emotional prompting. If you are consistently answering deeper questions than you are being asked, you are likely in an extraction pattern. Third tool: evaluate post-interaction clarity. Healthy interactions leave mutual understanding. Extractive ones leave detailed knowledge about one party and ambiguity about the other. The underlying mechanism is simple. Once stripped of personality labels, confidence can function either as expression of self, or as optimization of access to others. And the difference is rarely visible in the moment. It only becomes visible in what is left behind. Final reframing: not all confidence is presence. Some of it is structured absence designed to make others more visible than they intended. Next exploration in this series examines how microbehavioral timing, delays, pauses, and response latency can shape perceived dominance without a single word being altered.